Hey guys, back again with another video, a review on Titanfall 2 for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. A first-person shooter, a genre I usually don't dabble in too much. It's a genre that I kind of grew up on, and I really loved a lot of first-person shooters like back in the day. I do tend to like a good first-person shooter campaign, and unfortunately, that's something we haven't gotten a lot of the past generation, basically. And this year, there's been actually a few games where the campaigns are well regarded. Titanfall 2 is one of them. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, I hear the campaign is actually not that bad. And then we had Doom that came out fairly recently, which I did a review on, and that game I fucking loved. It's one of my favorite games of the year. And I heard Titanfall 2 had a surprisingly good campaign, and the first game didn't really have a campaign. It was basically a multiplayer-focused game, and the single player were basically a bunch of like these different packaged multiplayer objectives with like I think bots. I think there were bots in that game too. And then you had like a threadbare story kind of connecting the different multiplayer objectives together. It wasn't really a campaign, and that game I had no interest in it because I'm not a big multiplayer guy, especially competitive multiplayer. It just doesn't do anything for me. And I knew I wasn't going to play the multiplayer of this game all that much, and I put in maybe an hour, and that's about it. I don't see myself returning to it. I'll talk about that later, but I bought this game purely because of the hype for the single-player campaign, which was pretty strong. A lot of people were saying, oh man, like the campaign in this game is shockingly good. Now, I guess that's not too much of a surprise, considering that the developers of this game are mostly known for Call of Duty 4, which has, I think, one of the better campaigns of last generation, although I don't think it's aged terribly well, to be honest. But, yeah, the developers of this game, Respawn Entertainment, are a lot of members of Infinity Ward, back when they did Call of Duty 4. And, you know, Titanfall 2, one of the big differences between that first game is the fact that they've actually done a proper campaign now with an actual story behind it. And is it as good as people are saying? Yes, it is. I really enjoyed my time with the campaign of this game. And I got this game on sale for Black Friday. Now, for full price, it's not usually the game I would buy like for full price, especially since I was only going to be playing the campaign. But this game actually hasn't been doing all that well sales-wise, unfortunately. It came out at a very bad time. EA kind of sent this game out to die, right in between Battlefield 1, which sold really well, another game that they themselves published, and then Call of Duty, I think, came out a little bit after Titanfall 2. So it was in the crowded month of November with so many different shooters coming around at the same time, that the sales haven't been too good, but hopefully with word of mouth and all like the different sales that are going on for Black Friday, the game will hopefully get a bigger audience because, yeah, the campaign in this game is fantastic, and I highly recommend this game if you've been really in the mood for a first-person shooter campaign, and every game has just been disappointing to you. You know, because with last generation, we just saw a lot of first-person shooters focus on multiplayer, unfortunately. And I don't know. This could be a whole topic for like another for another time. Like why I feel like first-person shooters have kind of regressed over the years. But yeah, for this video, we're just going to be talking about Titanfall 2, and let's talk about the campaign right off the bat. So the story in this game is not amazing. It's a typical war type storyline. Your main character is named Jack Cooper, and he's kind of like a pilot for the militia, and basically the whole like setting behind this game, it's kind of got like a futuristic setting where you're on different planets, and then of course you've got the Titans, which are kind of mechs, and they've got like AI systems incorporated into them. And in the beginning of the game, when a certain character dies, and you take over their Titan, and the AI of this Titan is called BT, and the main hook with this game is the relationship that's built throughout the game between the pilot, Jack Cooper, and the Titan. And a few times throughout the game, you have like these dialogue choices that you can make when the Titan AI talks to the pilot. And the main character, Jack Cooper, he's not like this amazing character. He doesn't get a whole lot of development himself. And the main story behind the game is fairly generic. It's not all that interesting, and like the villains in the game are really hammy and over the top, which I can guess can be sort of enjoyable to some people. But for me, I didn't really enjoy it all that much. I can't say I was invested in the story. The writing generally is quite poor, but the relationship between the Titan and the pilot, I thought was actually kind of well done. And there's a lot of humorous moments between the two, and they kind of build this relationship from the beginning of the game until the end. And I really like how that relationship builds. I think it's easily one of the best parts of the game. And it kind of luckily outshines the rest of the story, which honestly is not very good. But the gameplay with the campaign is where it's at. And with Titanfall 2, a big focus for this game, I feel, and a lot of other people have mentioned this, is the game feel. This game runs at 60 FPS, and there's two different modes of play. You have the pilot mode, where you're walking around as the infantry unit, and you have a lot of different movement options at your disposal. You can wall run, you can do grapple, like you can grapple on grapple lines. You can do like a double jump. You can do a slide if you like hold circle, and you can like shoot enemies while you're sliding, and you can shoot enemies actually while you're doing all these different kind of movement options. And the sense of speed is exhilarating in this game, and the actual combat itself, the first-person combat, feels fantastic. All the weapons feel great. They're all different from each other. When you pull off headshots on enemies, it has this great like feel to it. And a big part of that is also the sound effects, which I'll get to later. But you can aim down sights with a lot of modern shooters, and it does have regenerating health, which I've never been a big fan of in first-person shooters, but I think the way it's handled here is decent. You can kind of run around to kind of try to avoid getting shot and run behind cover to get your health up. You do die pretty quick as the pilot, so you really have to be agile. And running around these environments and killing enemies using these movement options is fantastic, and the level design allows for this. The level design in this game is honestly kind of surprising. Now, it's not amazing, but it's actually creative at times. I don't really want to spoil some of the later levels, but basically, you have like a cloak ability that you can use with L1 where you can turn invisible for a little bit, and that lets you get the drop on some enemies and adds like a little bit of some like minor stealth into the game. But that stealth ability will change into different abilities later in the game that I don't want to spoil. But with these abilities that you'll unlock later, and you'll kind of combine this ability with the level design itself, and in some really interesting ways. Again, I wish I could talk about it, but I don't want to, because one of the great moments in this game are discovering the new kind of gimmicks that they'll throw your way and the different level design. One thing I will say is that the game does have platforming in it. It has first-person platforming, where you have to utilize your wall run ability to kind of jump between walls and get to where you need to go. And it's honestly actually pretty fun. I gotta say, I was shocked by how good the first-person platforming was. And it even works well when you can combine it with like the combat of the game. And it's like the kind of platforming challenges they throw at you, they're never too taxing, but they're challenging enough to be engaging, and they don't ever feel like throwaway parts of the game. And they feel authentic as far as like the level design goes. Generally, the level design is kind of like a point A to point B kind of thing, but the levels are more open than I would have expected. And they allow for all the different movement options that you have at your disposal. And when you combine that with how good the first-person combat feels, and like the general shooting and aiming, and how fluid it is with the 60 frames per second, it's a blast to play. It's a really fun game. And then we have the Titanfall mode, where you actually get into your Titan. And there's a bunch of different Titans that you'll actually unlock through the campaign, and each of them have their different loadouts. They'll have different weapons, whether it be a machine gun or like maybe a flamethrower type weapon or a rocket launcher. And they'll have different abilities that are on cooldown that you can use. Maybe a cloaking ability, maybe like a lock-on missile launcher that can target like 10 plus enemies at once, and you'll shoot all these missiles at enemies. The Titans are definitely slower than like the Pilot, for instance, but there's still a good sense of speed because you can boost around the map with the X button, I believe. And you can also run with the Titan as well, and some of them get aerial abilities where they can actually hover in the air and shoot missiles from the air. And there's actual boss battles that you'll be fighting in this game in the Titans, and they're actually really well done. You have to kind of dodge and weave out of the way, dodging missiles and attacks and getting behind cover, and kind of deciding which Titan rather, is best for which situation, because some Titan loadouts are obviously going to be better for other situations, and you can choose whatever Titan you want whenever you want. You just press right on the D-pad and you can switch between each one at will, which is fantastic. And again, the first-person combat in the Titan mode feels weighty. It feels it's got like a nice punch to it. You really feel powerful, and the way the Titan combat builds throughout the game is also fantastic. One mission towards the end, it's like this crescendo where you start off fighting like a few Titans at a time, but by the end of the game, you feel more in control of the Titan, and you feel like you've really gotten the grasp of things, and they'll send so many different enemies and Titans at you at once, and it's super intense, and it just feels great. And the balance and pacing in the campaign is fantastic as well. You'll never be the pilot for too long before you might have to get into a Titan. And there are also parts of the campaign where you can utilize both, and you can get out of the Titan whenever you want. Fantastic stuff. The campaign was really impressive. Now, the only complaint I can really level against it, other than the story being fairly weak, but honestly it doesn't really bother me all that much, is the length of the campaign. Unfortunately, it is only like a 5 to 6 hour campaign at most. Like I said before, the pacing is fantastic from start to finish, but I feel if there was just maybe a few more hours of content there, maybe a few more different like creative ideas they could have thrown in the campaign, it would have been better. Because I do feel it is a little too on the short side. But what is there is fantastic. It's phenomenal. And in some ways, I actually prefer it to Doom, which I was super positive on back when that came out. But they're both very different types of first-person shooters. Doom is more like a retro kind of throwback, really fast-paced and in-your-face, constantly strafing around enemies and just always in combat. This game leaves some room to breathe at certain sections, and it's definitely more modern with like the regenerating health and things like that. But it's definitely one of the best modern first-person shooters I've played. But I guess we should talk about the multiplayer a little bit, because that is a major component of the game, and it's something that a lot of people really get into. There's definitely a good amount of different modes, like Last Man Standing, where it's kind of almost like a deathmatch mode with only Titans, and who's ever the last man standing basically wins. You have your typical kind of deathmatch modes, where if you get like different kill streaks and you do better as the pilot, you can call down a Titan and get in that and start wrecking people online. There's a bunch of different maps. Again, the verticality of the maps, like in the single player, is excellent, and you can utilize all like these great movement options that you could in the campaign. And the same great combat feel is in multiplayer, but at the end of the day, it is a competitive multiplayer mode, or a competitive multiplayer in general, basically, and I find it hard to stay invested. There are unlocks. You're kind of leveling up your character and unlocking different Titans and customization options for your character. But at the end of the day, it still doesn't really do much for me, but I will admit this is a preference thing. And from what I did play of the multiplayer, it was solid, and I think people that enjoyed the multiplayer in Titanfall, the original, are going to love it here, and they're going to get a lot out of it. I certainly think it probably compares favorably to like Call of Duty or Battlefield 1. Although Battlefield 1 is kind of a different beast. Like that has more of like a teamwork kind of feel to it. Where Titanfall 2 is kind of like, there's some objective-based modes where teamwork is definitely going to help, but I feel a lot of the multiplayer is more like single-player focused, like being on your own and just killing like everybody you come across. But the multiplayer is definitely substantial. What's there is definitely substantial, and if you dig multiplayer, I think you're going to dig what they have to offer in this game. So, and that's about it for as far as like content goes in the game. And like I was saying, for full price, it can be a little hard to swallow, but I bought it because I just really want to support the developers because they really put a lot of effort into that campaign. And I think they deserve, they deserve the kind of full purchase price of the game, I feel. And hopefully they can actually make like another game, whether it be like a Titanfall 3 or another just first-person shooter, because I think these guys, they know how to craft like a great first-person shooter campaign. But anyways, moving on to visuals, the game looks fantastic. I think this game looks really good. The environments look amazing. Like the draw distances are really good. The game has this like really great futuristic look to it. The environment variety is fantastic. The character models are excellent. Like I said before, I'm glad they went with 60 FPS rather for this game. If it was 30 FPS, I don't think it would feel near as good. And there was hardly any slowdown at all. Like it's a smooth 60 frames per second. Everything just looks great. There's really not too much to complain about on the visuals. It looks great on the PS4. I imagine it looks even better on the PC. And I've heard the PC port was really good as well. Like they actually it's well optimized and things like that. Audio, like as we were saying before, actually the sound design and sound effects of this game are phenomenal. Really excellent, and they really add to like the impact that the guns have, and just the sound that happens when you like shoot enemies in this game. And some weapons have like this great effect where there's like this laser rail rifle that you get in this game, and it basically explodes the enemies. Like you shoot the pilots that you'll find across the campaign, and they'll explode into bloody chunks. And the sound effects are just fucking awesome for those weapons. So yeah, the sound design is really top notch. The music, on the other hand, it's typical Western first-person shooter music. It definitely goes for like that bombastic feel. It's kind of like orchestral-ish. Yeah, music not all that impressed by, unfortunately. I didn't care for the music all that much. But that's about it with Titanfall 2. I can't... other than that, I mean, the controls, like I mentioned before, are fantastic. The game just feels great. The audio, like the sound design is great in combination with like the presentation of the game. So if you love first-person shooters, I think this is definitely a purchase. Like, definitely go out and play it. If you're like me and have like longed for like an amazing first-person shooter campaign and have been disappointed with what's been on offer these past few years, please definitely give this game a shot. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by it. It's actually one of my favorite games of the year, which is crazy to think about. Even though I didn't get into the multiplayer all that much. But Titanfall 2, a game I was not expecting to even bother with. Even when I did hear that it was going to have a campaign. But pleasantly surprised. Definitely go out and try it if you're interested. But that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
It will automatically reorient itself once the new module is installed.